All right, in this video, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to programming in Python. And what we're going to look at is just simple output, just getting things to print on the screen. And we'll do a little math. And then we'll also look at string variables where we do some work with data that is not numeric. So let's get started. And I'm going to go ahead and open up idle. And I'm going to make a new program, a new file. And before I type anything, I'm just going to go ahead and save it right now. And I'm going to navigate to wherever you're keeping your AP Computer Science program folders or programs. And I already have a folder called My First Program. And your assignment is something different, but I'm just going to call this demo.py. And so when I go to my folder, we should see that here's my first program. I've got demo.py and okay, so I'll do a little work here. So one of the first things I'm going to do is just get some information to print on the screen. So I'm going to print, I hope this works. And what you're going to see in this is if you want something, words to print on the screen, we have a function called print, and there's parentheses, and then the value, the information we want printed goes in the parentheses. And since this is letters and words, we have to include it in quotes. And when I run it, and to run it, we can go to the run module, go here, and I forgot to save. So it says, do you want to save it? Okay. And we'll get a new shell window with the output. So let me drag this over here and move things around so we can have the output on the same screen. All right. We can also do a little bit of math. So I want to make some variables, a equals 5, b equals 12, c equals 13, okay? So when you want to store information in the computer's memory, what you do is you make up a variable name and you do equals, and then you store the value you want to put in the variable there. So what this does is it creates a location in the computer's memory, and it's labeled A, and the value 5 is stored in it. And if we wanted to do some math, I could do something like W equals, let's see, A plus B. And if I wanted to multiply, we don't have a time symbol on the keyboard, so we just use the asterisk. And then if I run this, you're going to see that there's no output for here. So the computer just stored these values in memory and did some math. But if we want to see what happens, print the value of W on the screen. See, there it is. All right. Notice here W is not in quotes, and so if you print something that is not in quotes, it is going to look for a variable with that name, and if it's in quotes, then it's going to literally print the information in quotes on the screen. All right. So let's do a couple more operations. X equals, let's do B, I'll do B divided by A, and I'll print X. So we use the slash to do division, and that seems to work fine. We also can do exponents, Y equals, and so let's just do 2 to the 8th power. So the exponent symbol, I think, like on your calculators, you might have a caret, but that does something else in Python and most programming languages. So in Python, the way you do exponents is 2 asterisks next to each other is an exponent, whereas a single asterisk is multiplication. And so let's print Y. Okay, and I'm starting to get in the way here of the output, so I'm going to go ahead and move. Okay, so there's your 2 to the 8th. You can do more complicated expressions. So I'm going to try something here, and Z equals 2 times A minus 3 plus B. So parentheses are okay to use. And I'll print Z. And I'm going to run this, and we're going to get an error for the first time. And okay, without worrying about what this message means right now, because if you haven't talked about functions, this doesn't make sense. But it doesn't like this expression right here, and So one thing to remember is that unlike just when we're writing things in our math class, like for algebra, when we have a value up against parentheses, the multiplication is not implicit. So you actually have to put the times sign in there if you want these things to get multiplied. And I like to just have spaces around all my operators for neatness. So this should work now. Okay. Let's see. We could also, variable names don't have to be a single letter, by the way. So if I'm going to get a quotient, I might abbreviate it like that. And I'm going to do 45 divided by 5. And I'm just doing this with two division. Well, actually, I'll do it with one division operator first. See, and so if I do it with two division, let's do something that doesn't come out even. Let's do 48 divided by 5. 48 divided by 5, and you see how it gave me 9.6. But there's another operator we can use, which is two backslashes. And what it does, okay, it didn't round. What it did is it truncates down. Okay, so even 9.9 would become 9. So, and there may be occasions where this kind of division is useful. All right. We talked a lot about modulus when we did with encryption and things like that. And so we can find a remainder. And I'll do 48. And in Python, the modulus operator is going to be the percent sign. Right? And 48 divided by 5 has a remainder of 3. So and actually these two kind of fit together because 48 divided by 5 is 9 with a remainder of 3. Okay, so enough with variables. One of the other things that I can do is store strings. Okay, so notice how when I store numeric variables, I just put the number there. But when I store strings, I have to include it in quotes. Also, you can see that variable names are not restricted to a letter or even a single word. If you have, if you want to just, let me do first name like that. If you want to make a variable name descriptive in a way that uses more than one word, then you just have to put an underscore between the variables. Another thing to notice is all my variable names are in lowercase letters only. That is a convention, and as our code gets more complex, as long as we always make variable names using only lowercase letters, code will be a lot easier to read and understand. So I'll do a last name. And one of the things that I could do now is I'll make another variable. Just so we can work with it. And notice how I made a numeric variable here, so I didn't put quotes around it. And so let's print sentence is. Okay, and so I want to print a sentence that says my name is John Cooper, but I want to access these variable names. So when we want to join literal strings with variable names, what we do is we type a literal string in quotes, and then we do the first name, or then we do the variable. And then I'll do this a little bit wrong here, just so you can see the mistake, and then I'll fix it. And I'll put a period at the end of my sentence. Okay. So I literally want this printed. And I want the values from these variables printed in a sentence. And it's almost what I wanted, but you can see things are kind of mushed together there. So what we have to understand is these spaces I put around the plus signs. I just made these spaces around here are just to make the code a little easier to read. But if you actually want spaces, you have to include it in the quotation marks. So if I run this, now I got a space here, but I still have my name wished together. So what I'm going to do, actually connect my first name and a blank space, and then my last name with plus signs. and then I can join it together. And by the way, this concept of joining literal strings with variables and using the plus operator to do that is called concatenation. Okay, concatenation, and that's just joining strings and variables with the plus sign. All right, so let's try something a little bit different, and we'll see an error in here as well. And let's do first name, and I'll break out. I'll join with quotes, and I'll say is age years old. And let's see if I can make this sentence appear. Okay. And I got an error. And it says can only concatenate string, not int, to another str. So it doesn't like this sentence. And there's that word concatenate. What it means is it's confused as to what to do with this plus operator. So normally, like if you have a number on two sides of a plus operator, then Python goes, oh, a number plus a number, I must be supposed to, my job is to do arithmetic here. I will add them. If I have a string, which is a sequence of characters, and another string with a plus between them, then Python goes, oh, a string and a string. I guess I'm supposed to join them together. I will concatenate. But when it gets a string, when it gets a string followed by a number and a plus in between, then it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so it throws an error. So what we have to do is I'm going to take my numeric variable and wrap it in a function called str. And what this will do is it will treat age as a string so that it can concatenate. And so when I run it this time, Python will see this operator and go, oh, there's a string on this side and there's a string on this side. Therefore, I'm supposed to join them together. And let's make sure it works. Okay, so that works. And let's see. Let's do one last thing just to show you, when you're doing math, it's probably a good idea to always use descriptive variable names, right? This ABC and XYZ is not necessarily the best thing. So let's say I wanted to do the perimeter of a rectangle. So I could say base equals 5, height, so fix that, equals 14, and I can say perimeter equals, and let's say I can do 2 times base plus height, and let's print it out. And you know what? Why not? Let's put it in a sentence. And I want to do perimeter here, but remember, perimeter is a numeric variable, and this is a string. So I'm going to say str perimeter. And let's end it with a period just for being grammatically correct. Okay, seems to work. All right. One last thing that's going to come up. And so you notice how whenever we have strings, we have to include them in quotes. And so what if we wanted to have quotes inside a string? So I'm going to go, move this down a little bit. I'm going to make another print statement, and we'll watch. I want to print a quotation out. I'm going to start the string with a quote, and I'm going to do another quote, and I'm going to start typing, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And things are getting, one thing you'll notice is the string is green here, and the colors are all messed up here, and weird stuff happened at that quote. This is by actually a little more room. Okay. And things are messed up because here's my quotation. It is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky. And the problem is I want this quote printed on the screen. So if I run this, I'm definitely going to get an error. And it just says invalid syntax, and it doesn't like this Y. And that's because what happened is this quote started the string, this quote ended it, and this Y just made no sense as a character to follow that. So this is a quote I actually want to print. So what we do, if you have a quote in a string that you actually want to print, you put a backslash character in front of it. So I want to print. So right, Python will look at this quote and say, oh, that's a special one you actually want to print. And then we actually want to print this one as well. So we'll put a backslash in front of it. And now this quote and this quote pair the beginning and the end, and the other ones will literally get printed. And let's make sure it works. And everything does work. And don't worry about the word wrapping right now. We're just doing output in the shell, right? We don't have much control of that. One last thing in our programs that really is a good idea is to include comments to explain what's going on. And so so if you lead off a line with that little hashtag, it'll be red. And so this is code that doesn't get executed. This is just a note for whoever's reading the code. So we can do so. So let's just label some sections of our code. So this is how we print. We do a little variables and arithmetic. I made a section on strings and concatenation. And then let's try, and then we did a section here on printing quotes. Okay, and so when I run this, the output doesn't change at all, but now I've got a program that's kind of nicely divided up into sections, and each block of code that performs a task or demonstrates a task is labeled so I can tell what's going on in each particular part. All right, so I hope this helps you get through the very first assignment. If you're an experienced coder, this is real easy, and if you're a new programmer, just go slow. You are going to make typos, read the error messages, and just compare really closely to what you see in the video compared to what you type, and I think you'll be able to figure things out.